Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, giving you the next project on the Delirium League, and that happens to be Bladefall comboed with BladeBlast. Now, BladeBlast is one of the new skills in the arsenal of the Blade territory category theme, and it can be used with ethereal knives, with Blade Vortex, and also Bladefall. But it seems to me like Bladefall has the nicest use of it, and it's entirely why I wanted to make a self-cast Bladefall into BladeBlast character, because Bladefall hasn't been too much of a popular thing for the past few leagues, but it is decent enough in its own right. This, however, BladeBlast edition just brings a bit of extra excitement and a lot of extra single target to this playstyle and skill, so it made me want to do some. But on top of that, you can easily do some cast on crit, some Poet's Pen, some Spell Slinger, whatever the hell you want for this sort of thing, and the interaction is just extremely strong. I chose to do self-cast because I kind of wanted to play an Inquisitor and have some really beefy single target damage, and try and check it out against some of the endgame content as well as the new endgame simulacrum, because I think that this this skill BladeBlast has potential to be some of the dumbest single target in the game. It's kind of entirely up to how many blades you have out there. From Bladefall you can have up to 40 down at a time, and then how many of your BladeBlast explosions all hit the same target. So if you get more area on your BladeBlast, there will be more overlap for the explosions, and if you get less area on your Bladefall, or more condensing of the blades that fall, then it will of course make a single target a lot easier to hit, though for the most part we're mapping with a really large Bladefall because it does some good damage on its own, but for single target you can chuck in things like Intensify, Conk Effect, take out your Spell Cascade, and then just target a single little clump with blades, and then press your BladeBlast, and it'll take all 40 of your blades off at once. And currently it's looking like millions of damage. It doesn't really factor it in too well, because on the path of building it'll factor in cast speed as well, and it depends on how many blades you set to hit your enemies, and I'd say you could pretty reliably have 20 blades hitting your enemies, and it's currently dealing something like 200,000 damage on average, so maybe 4 million per pop of BladeBlast. But if you keep firing down your Bladefalls and then keep popping your BladeBlasts, it might be more than that overall. But so far, nothing I've faced up until tier 11 maps has survived longer than one BladeBlast detonation. So it is a pretty ridiculous skill, and I did try it out while leveling with ethereal knives, and it was pretty bad. And I did try it out with Blade Vortex, and that felt kind of bad too. So it seems like Bladefall is the way to go, or perhaps you can do the others with Cast on Crit, and even this one, probably much better on Cast on Crit in a character like my Pathfinder that uses a two-hander, converts all its damage, and then cyclones around all over the place, and casts on crit just shits out spells. And you do that as a Pathfinder, as an Inquisitor, as an Assassin, as a Scion. It's pretty open-ended for that one, but you can see the single target here against just a Metamorph. Press BladeBlast once, basically, boom, everything's dead. So this is an Inquisitor, and if you're unfamiliar with the Inquisitor sort of playstyle, you do typically start out as full physical and then convert a lot of that damage into elemental, and then you can scale elemental more that way, and your elements aren't at all resisted thanks to Inquisitor, since it has a node that makes enemies have their resists completely ignored by you. So it's a very powerful way of scaling, especially with the right gear and the right tools at your disposal, like Taste of Hate, like some shaped gear, like Watcher's Eyes, and currently everything you're seeing is off of a completely bullshit 20C staff that does nothing, and I will be likely close to doubling my output by the end of this character. So off of a 5 link, off of pretty mediocre staff, and the rest of the gear is fairly achievable as well, it can do ridiculous damage. The playstyle isn't the hottest, I wouldn't say, because there is a delay on the Bladefall when you first press it, and it doesn't seem like it synergizes well with the current league mechanic, where you once again have to run over some pods, and then there's a delay for you to wait through. So it kind of feels a bit clunky in that regard, and it does become kind of like an ice and over sort of situation where you fire out one skill, then another, but a lot of the time it's just Bladefall doing the work. It's still just up to whether or not the delay is something you can handle, or if you want to just get rid of the delay by zooming around with cast on crit. There's still a delay there, but you'll probably feel it a lot less. In any case, let's have a look at how I've taken this character into its current setup so far. So here's our current dude, level 88, called Z Frames. I was predicting to have some pretty bad frame issues. They were kind of fixed up, and Bladefall and BladeBlast aren't the greatest on frames, but self-cast, it's not all that terrible. It is an Inquisitor, level 88, and I do want to show you real quick what the two things look like with the new microtransactions. This is with the Illusionist and the, for both of the effects. Illusionist Bladefall, quite a lot of little daggers going down, and then if you pop your BladeBlast, it has sort of a chain reaction detonate to all of the blasts, all of the blades, and it looks pretty cool. The default by itself, however, looks something like this. I think the green's actually really good in the BladeBlast default, so you don't really need a micro there, I don't think. Or you could get completely ridiculous with the new saw blade effects that they released as well, which is probably a bit too much and not something I've actually really played with. It does look kind of cool having these big saw blades in the ground, and then once you explode them, it does all of that. And it's pretty full on if you're going to be mapping and like playing with this. It becomes, you know, a huge visibility issue. So that's that taken care of. And then one other thing I wanted to really show you quickly was the fact that pretty sweet micro outfit, kind of like our entire character's theme for this one, using the new Scientist Mystery Box. But check it out when we go for a dashing. You can kind of see a entirely naked or half naked Templar old man just kind of like chasing me, because it's the dash after effect is still entirely based off of your original model, and it looks kind of silly. So yeah, that's just something I kind of noticed while doing some dashing on this character. In any case, BladeBlast, Bladefall. So the idea was that I'd have two different 6-links, one for BladeBlast, one for Bladefall. Bladefall is mostly a utility, but it still does plenty of damage. But the idea is that it's the one just throwing all the blades on the ground, and then BladeBlast does the detonation. And in practice, I figured it'd be something like you run around and you Bladefall everything in the game, and then only press your BladeBlast when you need a bit of extra single target. So it's not something you really use too frequently, but I currently kind of try and mash T all the time as well. But for the most part, you only really need BladeBlast during the actual burst damage on bosses and stuff. So we've got Bladefall, Spell Cascade, Unleash, Concentrated Effect, Fizz to Lightning, and Faster Casting, so that I can cast it a bit faster, Conk so I can concentrate the blades a bit more, Unleash so that I can get several waves going just about every time I cast, as opposed to just once every cast, and then Spell Cascade for larger effect and more blades. And then when we actually go into single target mode, we'll probably put in something like Intensify over the top of Spell Cascade, so then it's Unleash, Intensify, Conk effect, and you can see that really hones in our blades quite a bit more. Not terribly visible with that, but with that, it hones in our blades quite a bit more. And then if you have enough area, ideally every one of those blades should be hitting your larger bosses that you're out there facing. So that's kind of the plan, that's kind of the idea, and it should work out given enough area. So currently BladeBlast is on a 5-link. It doesn't really need a 6th link, but it certainly could use a bit of extra damage if you wanted to. And that's got BladeBlast, Energy Leech, Fizz to Lightning, Controlled Destruction, and Hypothermia. We are fully converted with Hrim Sorrow Gloves. That's half of our damage to cold, half of our damage to lightning through Fizz to Lightning. And then we're trying to get a bit of extra physical as lightning or cold through the use of a Crusader Amulet, I believe. Crusader Amulet, a Taste of Hate, and then a Hatred. We've got a Wrath with a Wrath Watcher's Eye. which we're currently running at like 100 chaos or so, so 25% fizz as extra lightning. And then I've taken advantage of the cluster jewel socket to get a bunch more effect. So we've got Vengeful Commander through the percent increased effect non-curse auras from your skills. And so we've got Vengeful Commander and then Precise Commander on one of these and the exact same one on the other. Precise Commander and Vengeful Commander. So in the end, through this, a couple of little passives, and down here, we should have something like 100% increased Wrath, Zealotry, and Hatred aura effect. And I think it makes for a pretty powerful combo. And then this is my current staff. It's something I bought at level 35 as a 6-link, just a 20C staff to level with. I've been working on making a better staff, and I think I've just about finished it now, which is this one here. So ideally we're going for +3 to level of all physical spell gems, so that works on Bladefall and BladeBlast, and then you want a multi-mod to get spell damage and then focus double damage for the burst damage. And a big staff like that ends up pretty much doubling my damage, I think, close to, whereas this one, it's kind of whatever. It's just a nice little utility staff. And then the rest of the gear, we got pretty straightforward boots, pretty straightforward belt, using a devouring diadem so we can fit all of our auras in with Zealotry, Hatred, Wrath, all attached to an Enlightened level 3 that gets turned into a level 4. And then a chest, which is a temple chest, since it's got the temple mod. And the important mod to craft on these is to have a spare prefix for % life as extra max ES. That's the largest bulk of our energy shield. And then I threw some essences of Hysteria onto shaped coral rings that just were catalyzed for more life, and then they got a good chance of rolling life, as well as the Hysteria % extra fire mod. Ideally was going for Assassin Mark, but don't always get what you want. And then we've just got a Cinder Swallow for now. And one other thing I wanted to mention about all of that was this. Since we are Eldritch Battery at this point and Mind Over Matter, so ends up allocating Eldritch Battery, what happens is your energy shield goes to your mana, and then you start using your energy shield as your main source of mana pool. You then grab Mind Over Matter so that that all works with energy shield as well. Whenever you take damage, energy shield takes damage as well. What we have is the fact that we can't get Arcane Surge anymore in our build, so we went with Arcane Heroism as our main large cluster so that you get good chance of Arcane Surge when you hit a unique enemy. And with the amount of things that we hit on unique enemies, it should be up pretty much all of the time, and that is a good damage increase as well. But that's in turn the playstyle. We've got all 3 auras up. You don't have to consume mana, you consume energy shield instead. Throw down your Bladefalls, explode your BladeBlasts, and do shit loads of damage. If you're going to do a similar sort of build, my first 4 points went up to Pious Path, then into Inevitable Judgment. Passive tree kind of makes itself. You just go out, grab some area, go to the shadow area, start getting crit. You do want as much area as possible so that the BladeBlast overlaps as much as it can on enemies. And then cluster jewel it up. I think this was kind of the right move, but there were a few other directions we could have gone. So it's pretty open to interpretation. And then just using jewels that have a bit of cast speed, bit of crit multi, stuff like that. And so far so good. Like I said, the delay is a little bit of a bitch on Bladefall, and probably better off doing this as cast on crit, Assassin, Inquisitor, Pathfinder. All that sort of stuff should be pretty thick. Just have a Bladefall and a BladeBlast all attached to cast on crit Cyclone, and then you're just really going to destroy your screen with Z-frame as action. You could also probably do Poet's Pen, Spellslinger action as well, so if you want, you can look into that. But self-cast so far should be working out, and I look forward to taking on some of the endgame content quite soon. So thank you very much for watching, hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time.